You are afraid of the dark. You probably think that's a little embarrassing, something you grew out of or should have grown out of years ago. But here's what nobody tells you. Your fear of the dark is not a weakness. It is one of the most sophisticated survival systems ever built by evolution, and it has been running inside you, completely unchanged for 3 million years. Let's go back to the beginning, not your beginning, the beginning of your species. 3 million years ago, your ancestors lived on the African savanna. No walls. No doors, no lights, just open grassland, darkness, and everything that used the darkness to hunt. The leopard, the hyena, the lion. These animals had something your ancestors did not. Night vision. In the dark, your ancestors were essentially blind, slow, vulnerable. Everything that wanted to eat them could see them perfectly, and they could see nothing. Think about what that means for a moment. For the vast majority of human existence, darkness was not an inconvenience, it was a death sentence. Every night for millions of years, the humans who survived were the ones who were afraid, the ones who stayed near the fire, who slept in groups, who woke at the slightest sound in the night. The ones who were not afraid, they died. And here is the uncomfortable truth about evolution. It does not care about your comfort. It only cares about survival. So it took every human who ever felt safe in the dark and removed them from the gene pool, and kept every human who felt terror. You are the descendant of the frightened ones. Every single one of your ancestors, going back 3 million years, was afraid of the dark, and they passed that fear to you. Not as a memory, not as a story, as biology. Now let's talk about what actually happens in your brain when the lights go out. The moment darkness falls, your brain does something remarkable. It shifts into a completely different operating mode. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats and triggering fear responses, becomes dramatically more active. This is not a metaphor. Researchers using brain imaging have shown that the amygdala lights up in darkness even when there is absolutely nothing there. Even when the person knows with certainty that they are in a completely safe room, the amygdala does not care what you know. It only cares what it cannot see, and what it cannot see, it treats as a potential threat. This is called hypervigilance. In the dark, your brain assumes the worst. Every sound becomes amplified. Your heart rate increases. Your pupils dilate to their maximum size, desperately trying to gather whatever light exists. Your muscles tense, ready to run or fight. Your breathing becomes shallow. All of this happens automatically, before you are even consciously aware that you are afraid. Your body is preparing for a predator that no longer exists, but your brain has not received that memo. Now, here is where it gets even more interesting. Humans are one of the only species on Earth that learn to conquer the dark, not by evolving better night vision, but by making light. The discovery of controlled fire, approximately 1 million years ago, was not just a cooking tool or a source of warmth. It was the first time in the history of life on Earth that a species actively pushed back the darkness, and what happened around those fires changed everything. When your ancestors sat around the fire at night, something remarkable happened. They talked. Anthropologist Wiessner studied the hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies, and recorded what they talked about during the day versus at night around the fire. During the day, conversations were mostly practical. Where to find food, who did what, immediate problems. But at night around the fire, stories. Stories about people who were not there, about the past and the future, about why things are the way they are. In other words, the campfire created the first conditions for what we now call culture. Stories, myths, shared identity. The darkness pushed humans together, and the fire gave them language. But even with fire, darkness remained dangerous because fire has edges. Beyond the circle of light, the night was still there, still, watching, and your ancestors knew it. This is why every culture in human history has populated the darkness with monsters. Not because ancient people were primitive or superstitious, but because their brains were doing exactly what your brain still does. Taking what cannot be seen and filling it with the worst possible thing, the darkness of every Culture has its predators, because the darkness of every brain has the same ancient alarm system. So what does this mean for you? When you sleep with a nightlight, you are not being childish. You are listening to 3 million years of accumulated wisdom. When you feel uneasy in a dark parking garage, your amygdala is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. When you cannot shake the feeling that something is in the dark, even when you know rationally that nothing is there, you are experiencing one of the oldest and most deeply wired responses in the human brain. The fear of the dark is not irrational. It is the most rational thing your brain has ever done. It just happens to be running on ancient software in a world that no longer has leopards hiding in the shadows. Your brain does not know that, and in a very real sense, it does not need to, because the same hypervigilance that makes you check the dark corners of a room at night is the same system that kept every single one of your ancestors alive long enough to have children, long enough to eventually have you. The dark scared them, and because it scared them, you exist. There is something almost beautiful about that. You are not afraid of the dark because something is wrong with you. You are afraid of the dark because everything went exactly right for 3 million years. Tonight, when you reach for the light switch, remember that your fear is ancient. Your fear is human. Your fear kept your entire bloodline alive. And somewhere, deep in the part of your brain that never quite believes the room is empty, your ancestors are still keeping watch. Here is something that most people never consider. The fear of the dark is not the same as the fear of what is in the dark. They are two different things. The fear of what is in the dark is learned, rational, specific. A child who has never seen a horror film can still be afraid of the dark, because the fear of darkness itself is something older and deeper than any specific threat. It is the fear of not knowing, of information deprivation. Your brain is a prediction machine. It constantly models the world around you, making thousands of tiny predictions every second about what will happen next. In the light, it has the information it needs to make those predictions. In the dark, it has almost nothing, and a brain without information does not become calm. It becomes creative. It fills the gaps with the worst possible scenarios, not because you are anxious or broken, but because in the environment where your brain evolved, the worst possible scenario was almost always the correct one. The rustle in the grass was usually something dangerous. The shadow at the edge of the firelight was worth taking seriously. The brain that assumed the worst and was wrong lost nothing. The brain that assumed the best and was wrong lost everything. So your brain, in the dark, still does what it was built to do. It imagines the worst. It prepares for the worst, and it waits. Neuroscientist Dean Mobbs and his colleagues at Cambridge University have shown that the brain processes darkness-related fear differently from other types of fear.